Designer's Cafe.
Hey, this is Mead for AUsquared.com, back again with more drawing lessons. This time a retake of the perspective drawing lessons. We're going to start with the basics right now. And we're going to start very simply with vanishing points, horizon lines, and planes, and explain what all those are. They're pretty simple. When you look out at a landscape or something, you see, if you look out far enough and you have enough of a distance away, you kind of see the curvature of the earth. But for practical purposes within the drawing world, you're generally going to use a straight line. And that's because you're generally looking at a segment maybe that long. You're not looking at this huge landscape. So basically, even if you can't see your horizon line, for the purposes of drawing, your horizon line is going to be there. If it's covered up with buildings, whatever, it's still there. So basically, you take your height, whatever height you're sitting at to draw or standing at, and you project a line paralleling the ground out, and that is going to be your horizon line. So when you think of the horizon line, you're thinking of a line that's really far away from you and in deep space. And when you're picking a vanishing point, it depends on where you are along that horizon line. Like if you're looking down a road and you're right here, your vanishing point is going to be right there. If you're looking down a road there, it might be there. It just depends. So it's like if you took your eyeballs out and they just flung out of your head and then smacked against the wall at exactly the height of your eyeballs without dropping from gravity, that's where your vanishing point would be. So you might choose something centered to start out with, because it's pretty simple. Now, in 1 point perspective, most of your lines aren't actually going to go towards the vanishing point. In fact, only planes that recede away from you in one direction are going to go towards that point. So if you make a plane by dropping lines down to the vanishing point, like so, those are the only lines in this plane that are going to actually go that direction. The rest are simply just going to be parallel to the horizon line. And if they aren't parallel, then you're working with 2 point perspective. So that's a simple plane in 1 point perspective. Now, you might have multiple horizon lines in other situations, but we're just going to be working with one for now. And the difference here in 1 and 2 point perspective, or one of the similarities, is that both in 1 point perspective and 2 point perspective, any line that you project upwards is simply going to be perpendicular to the horizon line. It's really pretty simple. So again, boom, parallel, perpendicular. So you have kind of like two sets of lines that aren't actually going towards the vanishing point. That'll change in 2 point perspective, and in fact, all three will go towards the vanishing point in 3 point perspective. So that's really the difference between all the major types of perspective. So 1 point you have like one set of lines going towards the horizon line. In 2 point you have two sets of lines, the original and another set. 3 you have the original that second set and the third set, and I'll show you how that works a little bit later. Whenever you're picking your horizon line, that's an important compositional tool. Do you want your horizon line to sort of be down here? Do you want it to be up here? Do you want it to be dead center? Do you want it to be at like the third? So start thinking about that in your compositions. You can even think, oh well, maybe the horizon line is off the page, and I have to draw a line on the table or the board that I'm working on, and make all the lines head to a vanishing point on that, totally off the page. And that can make for an interesting drawing too if you're looking at like an extreme angle or looking down on something, or up at something, in fact. So that's kind of like how you'll start to pick and choose these vanishing points. So that's really all the basics of like 1 point perspective, planes, vanishing points, and it's pretty simple. So if you're going to say draw a box, let me give you an example of an application. Like a box in 1 point perspective would be a little tricky, because you would want to probably use 2 point perspective unless you're facing the box directly. So you might have a situation where the box is here, your vanishing point is pretty much centered over it, and then you're just going to draw lines back to the horizon. Boom, and there you have a box in 1 point perspective. It's a pretty simple idea. And then one thing to remember that I was taking a lot of shortcuts there, but one thing to remember when you're first starting out in perspective is don't take shortcuts. Draw all the way through every object that you draw at first, and then when you get comfortable, when it's all internalized, then you're going to skip steps, and you're gonna not necessarily draw through a form. But for now, be sure to. It's sort of like when you're learning math, when you're in elementary school. You gotta show your work, and then you can skip steps later as you get all the steps memorized, internalized, and you're not as fallible at it. So this example, you kind of see all the way through the form. And that is it for this part. Let's go on to part 2.